Welcome to Carlton's Math Corner. Today, we are going to continue our study on real numbers. To begin, well, let's put a smile on our face and get ready to learn. Make sure you have your math journal, vocabulary packet, as well as something to write with. Our target today is I can determine the integers that rational numbers are between without a calculator. So, for instance, let's start off with this square root. Square root of 15. Well, I need to figure out approximately what two factors or two square roots this square root of 15 is between. So I'm trying to find the integers, the whole number, or could be a negative number. So because I'm looking for integers, I'm trying to figure out what two square roots square root of 15 is between. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually think of square roots that are before it and after it. So I noticed that this is square root of 15. So I look for numbers below it that I could get a perfect square root. So I know that square root of 14, not a perfect square root. Square root of 13, not a perfect square root. Square root of 12, square root of 11, square root of 10, none of those are perfect square roots. But I do know that square root of 9, well, here's the square root of 9. 3 times 3 is 9. So I know the square root of 9 is 3. Okay? So that would be the closest square root that is less than the square root of 15. That would be a perfect square root. Okay, so square root of 9 is 3. Now let's go on the other side. Let's look at square roots that are greater than, and we're looking for a perfect square root. Well, we're looking for 15, so the next number after 15 would be 16. Well, we're in luck. Square root of 16 already is a perfect square root. The square root of 16 is 4. So I know that square root of 15, if I put it in my calculator, I should get an answer that's between 3 and 4. Okay, and so let's try it out. Let's see if we get that answer. Okay, so let's take out a calculator. So here's my scientific calculator that I'm going to use. And I'm going to do square root of 15. And I'm going to put my parenthesis in to end the parentheses. And I get an answer of 3.87298, etc., etc., etc. Notice it's not a perfect square root. I didn't expect to get one. Is this number in between 3 and 4? It sure is. So actually we chose the correct integers. So the way that I write my answer is I say that square root of 15 is greater than 3. And the reason why I'm saying greater than 3 is because do you notice the mouth is facing the square root of 15? So that means square root of 15 should be bigger than 3. Or we could say it the other way. We could say 3 is less than, because this is a less than symbol, 3 is less than square root of 15, which is true because square root of 15, remember we found out was 3.8729, etc. So it is smaller. 3 is less than that, which in turn is also less than 4. And it is. So this is how our answer will look today. Okay, so look at the next one. Negative square root of 70. Okay, and so first of all, notice this is negative. Negatives. Well, the thing that I know about negatives is that they are to the left of 0, and I know that the further away they get from 0, meaning the bigger the number looks as a negative, the smaller it is. So negative Square root of 70? Well, that's quite small. I mean, square root of 70, we're working with a two-digit number. It is further away from 0. And so when we're writing our answer out today, when we work with negatives, we are going to kind of flip the order, meaning we're going to look on the left side, we are going to look for numbers that are bigger than 70. Because technically we're working with negative numbers. And remember, negative numbers, the bigger they look, the smaller they are. They are further from 0, okay? And so when I look at square root of 70 and I look for numbers, that look bigger, but really they're not, I'm looking for the next square root that would be a perfect square root. And the next square root would be square root of 81. Because I know that 9 times 9, and here's an example of it. This is a visual. 9 times 9 would be 81. And notice there's a negative symbol on the outside. So I'm going to put a negative. Okay? Now on the other side of negative square root of 70, I am going to look for something that it looks smaller, but really it's bigger because it's getting closer and closer to 0. So I'm looking for the first perfect square root. And the first perfect square root that I found was square root of 64. Because I know that 8 times 8 is 64. And we're focusing on the negative. Now notice the 9 looks bigger than the 8. But because of the negative symbol, it's not. It's actually smaller. It's less than 8. So that's why it's over on the left side, because negative 9 is less than the negative square root of 70. And if we look at the calculator and try it out, let's clear this out and do square root of 70. And notice I'm not going to put a negative in front of it because we can put a negative in front of it ourselves. I am just going to do square root of 70 to see what it is. And here's the answer I got. Is 8.36660026, etc. Okay, and I'm going to put a negative in front of it. So if I put a negative in front of that, it'd be about negative 8.4 if I rounded it to the nearest tenth. So about negative 8.4. Is negative 9 smaller or less than negative 8.4? Yes, it is, because it looks bigger. That's why it's smaller. Okay, and is negative 8.4 smaller than negative 8? Yes, it is. It is less than negative 8. And so this is how we would write our answer. Now, if that gets confusing for you, with the negatives, if the negatives are confusing, what I would recommend is, start off with square root of 70. Look for, you can look for the number that's smaller first. You could look for one of them first. And then notice, so we found the square root of 81 and it's 9. And notice the next number that we found was square root of 64, which was 8. And notice these are consecutive numbers. And even up here, these are also consecutive numbers. So if you find one of them, you should be able to tell me what the next number would be. Okay, and same thing is true for even negative. If you find one of them, you should be able to tell me one greater than that. Okay, it's always one greater than that, and they're consecutive next to each other. Okay, so our steps that we're going to do is you're going to find the two perfect squares that the number is between. Whoops, sorry about that. And you're going to find the square root of each of those numbers, and then we're going to write out an inequality. And the order does matter. The smallest number goes first, then we put in a less than symbol, we put in the number that we were looking for, and then we put another less than symbol, and then we put the greatest number here. It is always in that order, okay? What I would like you to do is actually try these. I want you to estimate. That means I only want you to use a calculator to check your answer, but I want you to estimate first. I want you to see if you can figure out what two perfect square roots are these numbers between. Okay, I want you to try out 4 of them. Thank you so much for joining me at Carlton's Math Corner, and I look forward to meeting with you again.